Hello there, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our another series of webinars. Today, we'll be talking about a topic that comes about pretty frequently when we are working with our new venture as well as our existing business owner clients, independent contractors versus employees. And I have with us our guest speaker, Pam Thornton from the Employers Association of the Northeast. Welcome, Pam.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us today. And we have a good partnership with the Employers Association of Northeast. A lot of our clients have leverage their resources. So if anybody wants to take advantage of their tools and resources, we'll be happy to help you get connected. So before we get started, I think it makes sense to give a quick overview of who we are and what we do. So the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center, we are a nationwide network of SBDCs. We exist to train, educate, and support entrepreneurs, both pre-venture startups as well as existing business owners. We provide one-on-one, no-cost and confidential business counseling on a variety of business planning and business development areas. So if you need somebody to talk to you about your business plan, market research, capital planning, a number of whatever you're looking at help with, or if you have somebody that that might need some help, kind of like brainstorming or thinking through a business plan or navigating a business planning process, please think of us. And towards the end of our presentation, we will certainly share our website and some of our contact information. But without any further ado, I would like to bring Pam to start our presentation. So let me share the slide we have ready for you, and we can get things started. So there it is. Pam, the floor is all yours. And once again, thank you so much for taking time to present to our audience today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here. I know we've done some work with many of you, and we're really looking forward to continuing that relationship. So hopefully today, when we start to talk about employees versus independent contractor, this is something that resonates with you. If you have further questions, we're happy to answer them. But I know that this is something that comes up a lot when I am talking with employers, particularly on our hotline. It's about what's the difference and why is it important, and why can't I just make that decision as the employer? Well, there's a couple of reasons why. So we're going to jump right in and talk about what that looks like for everybody. Go to the next slide for me. All right, great. So we're going to talk about why it's important. We're going to talk about the laws that kind of govern all of this. Okay. What do we need to be concerned about? We're going to talk about the difference between an independent contractor and a W-2 employee and why in the world it even matters. And then I want to touch briefly on some really common pitfalls and mistakes that people make as they're going through this process of deciding whether or not we want to be calling our people independent contractors or employees, and certainly paying them and managing them in that fashion. So these are the things we're going to talk about today. Next slide there. Thank you. So why in the world does this even matter, right? Basically, it's because the employer or the employer of record who is navigating, managing, and taking care of these employees and having them produce products and services are the ones who are responsible for how they do this. And what I'm going to say is that one size doesn't fit all. There are laws that govern how we define independent contractors, certainly, but it's not a and white situation. Sometimes there is the gray, we call it, but there's the impact of the gray, as there always is, right? So there is something that we go through in terms of being able to define this. It truly is an assessment that the employer needs to make, and if ever called out upon it, needs to be able to say, we did make the assessment, here's what it looks like, and here are the factors that we considered as we went through and decided whether or not to make someone an independent contractor or a W-2 employee. Some of the laws differ by state and federal. We're really going to focus on federally what drives this process so that you can have that framework. There are some nuances by state, certainly, but when we look at Rhode Island specifically, federal really is kind of the overarching and very much a good framework for how we move forward with this. So it's more than just, either starting a business, managing a business, and saying we're going to 1099 someone because we think that's the easiest. And for most of us, when we think about that and we, talk with our accountants, that is an easy thing to do, but you can't just do that. It's not just a broad stroke across the board. There's implications to that. Next slide for me, please. There we go. Okay. So I keep talking about these laws. I've mentioned it a couple times. So what's the reason that we have laws around this, and why does it matter? Certainly, these laws, we're going to talk about workers' compensation, unemployment, something that we call wage and hour, and federal and state tax laws govern how we pay people. And that is the number one thing that we're in charge of, right? Is making sure that people get paid for the work that they do. And when we think about ourselves and we look at, our pay advice or our paychecks, we know that we get certain taxes taken out. We have things like, Social Security taken out. We have all kinds of payroll taxes. Some of them, ebb and flow, right? They're for all different reasons at different times of the year and different times in the payroll cycle. And it's because those taxes help protect us against, being able to have benefits as we move forward. So I'm just going to take one, for instance, if we didn't pay into Social Security, we wouldn't have that Social Security benefit as, we retire, we look to collect on it. So independent contractors do not have any of these taxes taken out. So it's certainly advantageous if we can go this route. The independent contractor assumes all of their own responsibility to pay taxes and pay into these funds or these tax funds, but not all employees or not all people that provide services are able to do that. So the benefit of being able to pay into something and being able to collect on it later is truly something that a W-2 employee gets. And we don't want to be the organization that doesn't consider that for the people that are providing services for us. So we want to talk about what that looks like as we move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we think about independent contractor overall, what I'm going to say is everybody can be considered an employee. Everybody can be on payroll, can receive a W-2. You can set your employees up that way. That is specifically the safest way to do this. But where we get an advantage and to be able to take advantage of the potential of setting someone up as an independent contractor, that's how we have to look at what determines that. What are the things that actually go into that assessment? And there's several factors. It is not one specific thing that we look at. Again, not black and white. There's certainly a lot of things that we consider, and it has to be done kind of on a collective basis. So we look at things on a collective basis. We make a determination whether or not we can say someone's an independent contractor or an employee, and we can always change it. What I want to say, make sure that everybody takes away from this, is that the safest way to do it is to make sure that people are getting paid. If they are considered an employee, that taking all the taxes out, that they need to be that need to be taken out. But it is a big lift, right? Sometimes we don't want to go down that road. We're not sure, how many employees we need. We're not sure how long we're going to need them for. We want flexibility. Well, in order to do that, we really have to go through this assessment process and really understand what the criteria looks like. Next slide, please. So we use what's called the common law test, and this is a federal test that the IRS puts out there. It's the most well-known test. It's as specific as you can get. Again, there are certain nuances by state that also can play a role into this federal test, but the federal test is the best one to use, and it really evaluates whether or not someone should be considered an employee or an independent contractor. And the factors that they use are broken down into 3 specific categories. It looks at something that we call behavioral. So how does this person perform? What are the behaviors? The second category is financial. What is the financial impact of having the person as an independent contractor or an employee? And what does the relationship look like? So what does the relationship look like with the employer? What does the relationship look like with the clients and the customers? And again, these are the 3 categories that they use overarching to determine this criteria, to determine whether or not someone can be classified as an independent contractor. So the other piece I want to make sure we go through is that, when we look at 1099 and W-2, there are 2 different types of tax forms. So everybody has to pay taxes, right? Everybody has to pay taxes. A 1099 has to pay it on their own. They get a 1099 tax form, and a W-2 employee will get a W-2 at the end of the year. So everybody has to pay taxes. It's just about how they do that. So the first piece of the common law test is this behavioral factors concept, okay? And it looks at what is the type and the degree of instruction. What is it that the person is doing? How are they doing it? What's the level of evaluation of the work performed? Am I someone who is coming in with my own ideas about how something is to be done? Is it something that my employer is telling me how to do it, or do I do it on my own? And is there any control over that on the employer side? A lot of this is about having freedom of control. So an independent contractor really has the right to come in with their own ideas, their own programs, and deliver. If I'm guiding that in any way as the employer, it's probably, crossing that line of being an employee. And certainly around training, when we think about training, am I providing training to an independent contractor? Well, if I have freedom of control and I'm coming in with my own ideas and I'm truly independent, then I probably am not going to need training from the employer. I might need a process. This is how we do it here. But training on the actual competency of the work and the service I'm providing, I should already have. So that's the behavioral piece. Next slide, please. Okay, when we look at financial factors, what is the impact? So is there a significant investment in equipment? Am I bringing in my own equipment? And if this equipment is mine, am I able to use it in the way that I want to? Or is my employer directing the way that the equipment should be used? Any expenses that I'm incurring, are those mine as an independent contractor, or is my employer reimbursing me for them? The more that the employer gives input, provides reimbursed expenses, those kinds of things make it look like this person is part of your business, and it really should be considered an employee. Opportunity for profit or loss. What's the impact if this person doesn't provide the service? Do I have somebody else who can do it? Another thing to be looking at. Services available to the market. Is this person completely unique? Do I have other people in my organization that do it? How am I paying them? Am I paying them through accounting with an invoice that they're providing me, or am I paying them, out of another fund? Are they part of a grant? Really looking at those pieces are really important when we look at that financial impact of an independent contractor. Next slide, Amit. And then finally, we look at, what is the relationship? So this kind of goes back to the beginning when I was talking about if I'm working and providing services or a product or service for you, for my employer, am I truly being directed by them? Do we have a written contract? And what does that written contract say? Does that contract basically lay out the specifics of my Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 job responsibilities? If I'm truly independent, I'm coming in with my own background, experience, skills, and I'm going to deliver that in the way that I see fit. Those are the things that really help us determine between independent contractor and employee. Am I providing benefits? If I'm providing benefits to an employee, they probably are an employee. That can get a little gray. We need to look at that as part of the assessment. What kinds of benefits are we talking about? Are they statutory or voluntary benefits? That's something we need to really look at. What is the permanency of the relationship? An independent contractor, again, has that freedom of control. So these opportunities, when they're working with you, they can kind of come and go as they please. It's tough to say, we've got a project for you. It's going to last 8 months. Does that make sense to say that? Probably. But do they have the opportunity to do that in that 8-month period the way that they want to, the schedule that they want to, with the equipment that they want to, with their own creative intellectual property that they want to use? Yes, they do. And that would make them an independent contractor. And is the service that they're providing key to the business? So that's something to think about. And we could get in a long conversation about this. So I really just want to talk about it very high level, and we can take it offline if you have questions about that. But often an independent contractor is coming in with a competency or a service that's not akin or part of my normal business, because those people are usually employees. If they're part of my normal business and I can't function without that person providing that service, probably going to be an employee. Okay, next slide. So as we talk about, what are the common mistakes? What are the pitfalls that employers make when they're going through this process, this assessment, as they're deciding whether or not they want to make this person an independent contractor or an employee? Some of the things I want you to think about and I want you to ask yourself is, do we have somebody in our organization, and I'm going to just use this really simplistic example of an administrative assistant. Okay, so an administrative assistant is answering the phone, they're making copies, they're writing letters, they're doing those kinds of things. Would I bring in an independent contractor to do the same kind of thing? Perhaps maybe because it was busy that time of year, or I was having some turnover and I needed an additional set of hands. You would bring in another employee because it's already something that you're doing in your business. You're already paying an employee to do that work. So bringing in an independent contractor really wouldn't make sense. You would see how that really is incongruent, right? So something to ask yourself as you're considering that real example. Another thought, did the company retain the right to exercise discretion and control over the service, regardless of whether the right was exercised? So what do I mean by that? Am I really directing that person's day-to-day? Or is that, if we're in a situation where the person has decided a certain way to do a project, am I okay with that as the employer? Am I okay with that person exercising their own discretion on how they want to complete a project or create a product? That is truly an independent contractor. Otherwise, if I'm directing how something's supposed to be done, perhaps using a set of instructions or guidelines, or even an inspection process, then that is something that you really would consider an employee of your company. Something to think about, something to ask yourself as you're going through that process. And then finally, an individual that's providing a service for an employer that's not reflected on the employer's business record. Okay, so, and these two bullets kind of go together. So a lot of times we will bring, somebody in to provide a service. This happens a lot. I hate to, pigeonhole anybody, but it happens sometimes on the marketing side, right? So we've got a company, we all need to go to market. We all need to promote what it is that we do. And so we're creating websites, we're creating marketing collateral, and we're doing all kinds of things like that internally. Maybe we've got our administrative assistant doing that, or our marketing person per se. But sometimes we bring in, again, this extra set of hands, but they have more of an expertise on the website side. If they truly are someone who's got that degree of expertise, and I'm not a website business or I'm not a marketing business, that's okay. That's probably going to be okay, very generally speaking, to make that person an independent contractor. The other thing that happens is sometimes we bring someone and we just pay them off the books. We pay them under the table. We don't have, the documents to really, reflect that they were part of a product or a service that we delivered. And it's because maybe it's short term, or maybe it's just a one-time thing where we needed somebody to come in and do something for us, one time. That could be okay. But again, it's got to go through that assessment process. You really need to look at that piece. And anytime we're paying anybody under the table or off the books, what I'm going to say is, you really want to be analyzing that. Should it truly be, employee versus 1099 employee? So that, again, that's part of that evaluation process. But this happens a lot of the times when we're doing kind of these one-off kinds of services. So another thing to kind of ask yourself as you're going through that process. I think that's probably all I had. I wanted to keep it kind of, short and sweet. And that's so if you have other questions that you're thinking about that might be relative for people or relevant at this point.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pam. I mean, very, very insightful. I guess, the whole world is kind of moving towards the gig economy, right? I mean, it's flexible, it's temporary, and the nature of freelancing. And as we see more and more people move towards towards that, I think this is going to be a topic that's going to be very, very relevant. So I did have some questions, and I guess in some ways you've already answered those questions, but I think it does not hurt us to kind of do a quick rundown of that, to do some kind of summary of this presentation. So the first question is, can someone collect health insurance and other benefits and still be considered as an independent contractor?
That is a really great question. Great question. So you're really not going to have an independent contractor on your health insurance. Pretty typically, there might be some outside situations, but I really think from a very general perspective, if someone is paying into the statutory things like your your income tax, your payroll taxes, all those kinds of things, you could carry them on your health insurance, but that's really going to be for the employee. What it looks like when you're carrying someone on your health insurance is it looks like they're an employee, and to have them be an independent contractor would really be a red flag, because again, they're going to be collecting a benefit that the company is providing that typically is statutory.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question, would I be considered an independent contractor if the company provides me a computer and an office?
So that, again, this is going to be all part of that assessment, right? And we kind of talked about that a little bit. It depends on what my job is. So if I'm someone who works in the office, and those are the kinds of equipment that I'm using, and let's say I'm working in my remote office, but that's really all I do. Again, you've supplied me with the material. It depends. It's going to depend on what the job specifically is. Let's say I'm a marketing person, right? And you've provided me with all of my equipment, probably an employee. If I'm a photographer, we'll just say, and I've got a whole other set of equipment to use, but you wanted to give me one piece of the equipment or two pieces of the equipment that it takes for me to get my job done, we'd probably look at some other factors too to see how that would weigh, in which direction.
Yeah, thank you. Are your business or traveling expenses reimbursed?
So as an independent contractor, that would be something you wouldn't tip as the employer. If you employee, typically to motivate an employee to go do those kinds of things, you're going to pay them for that. But the independent is probably going to build it into their flat rate.
Hiring and firing here. Are you subject to dismissals other than non-performance of the contract specification? Independent contractor will be fired for a reason other than the non-performance.
Oh yeah. So basically, the relationship with the independent contractor is project basis, right? So we don't adhere to a lot of the things that we have to, like.
So that concludes our webinar for today, independent contractor versus employees. It's a big topic, so we might not have had a chance to go over everything. So feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'll try to schedule a one-on-one counseling and try to answer those questions for you. As I said before, we are the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center. At the core of our services is our no-cost and confidential one-on-one business counseling. If you are thinking about starting a new business, or if you are an existing business owner and you need help in the areas of business planning and development, feel free to reach out to us. Our phone number is 401-874-7232, or you can sign up on our website, risbdc.org. Would be happy to work with you. I'm one of the regional directors, and we have counselors who work with businesses throughout the state of Rhode Island. So please do think of us as your business mentoring services. Before I wrap things up, I wanna end on a positive note. I think it would be amiss if I did not mention what's happening in the world today. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit every sector of the economy. It has changed the way we live. It has changed the way businesses are run. And there's no group that has been hit more than the small business community. But this will be over soon, right? This has to be over soon. Think about all the devastation in the world prior to this pandemic. The Great Depression, World War II, 9/11. Those are all bad, but they all had one thing in common. These crises will not last forever. Eventually, it will be over, and there's going to be a new day. There's going to be a new beginning, and hopefully, we'll have learned our lessons, and hopefully we come back stronger. So yeah, the financial impact and the trauma of this pandemic is going to live a lot longer. There's no doubt about that. But we will survive this. We'll help each other out. We'll help the small business community, and we just have to be positive and know that good things are coming. This too shall pass. So with that, thank you so much again for joining us. It was a pleasure to present this webinar. My name is Amit Basnett, and I'm signing off from the Rhode Island Small Business Development Center. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye now.